Alright, what's up guys? Today we're going to do a video that was requested a couple times by different people, and that is how to paint different species of pine trees. So as this isn't going to be a full landscape, it's just going to be a couple different trees here and there. I'm looking at a few different scientific illustrations and photos of pine trees for reference, and I'm going to use acrylic paint for this one. I have 3 paint brushes here. This is a kind of a medium-sized round-tipped brush, about a 1/2 inch. This is a flat-tipped brush, and then we have an angled brush, which is, they're all about the same size, thickness at least. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just give you an idea of how the branches and the colors may differ in these different species of trees. Alright, let's look at our paints. We have Viridian green right here, olive green, sap green, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, burnt sienna, cadmium yellow medium, black, burnt umber, and I'm going to add some white right here. Okay, so the first tree we're going to do is a lodgepole pine. So I'm going to start with the trunk by mixing black and my burnt umber and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And we're just going to start with that one right up in this corner here. So I'm holding the brush this way to get a nice straight thin line. If I hold the brush this way, it's going to give me a thick line, so I'm holding the brush this way, and it's just going to get thinner by me picking up the brush from the canvas. So I'm pressing down harder here, and then I pick up the brush. I don't press it as hard as I get to the top there, and just let it make it sway right off the canvas. Then we start to add some little branches that come off of it. So the lodgepole pine has branches that kind of come out to the side at a nice angle. So I'm just very lightly holding the brush, letting it start to sketch out some branches. We don't want every branch to come out perfectly to the side and then go up. Some of them are going to come down a little bit. Some of them are going to come straight out. Some are going to appear like they're going straight up almost just because of the angle. And we just kind of keep on adding these. At the top they're really small, and I'm just kind of flicking the brush here to give me a couple little ones. You can start to add some smaller ones that come off of the main branches too. And most of these get covered up, but it just helps to see some branches when you're painting these. Alright, so I guess I can fix the bottom here too. We'll just do that. And that's our ground right there. Alright, so now I'm going to start with my shadows first. So I'm going to mix my phthalo blue with my sap green. A little more phthalo blue. And then I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to hold it at an angle. So I'm going to hold it like this. So before I was holding it flat basically on the canvas. Now I'm holding it so I get an angle so that side tip of the brush can add some paint on here. And we're going to start at the top and then work our way down. And at the top, you're just very lightly pressing and doing a couple little, it makes these little circle shapes. And then they build to being like more of a blob. But you want the center to be the tallest one. And they all just kind of come out. You can leave some space open right around the trunk, especially towards the top where it's not as full. And then you just kind of make sure all these little guys, little leaves or pine needles are kind of facing up. So you wouldn't have it like drooping down because they're all facing up towards the light. And then we do have some gaps where the background would be visible through these little pine needles. So if you're doing a real painting, you want to paint the sky behind it before you paint the tree. So we're just making these clusters of pines that kind of go together and leave some space open to see the branches. But it doesn't have to be completely covered in branches. This is not a super thick pine needle branched tree. And I just thicken it up a little bit. My style of painting, I usually make the trees a little more full than they appear in real life. And that's just my preference with painting, so whatever you prefer, you can do it that way. So I just kept my brush dirty. I didn't clean it off at all. I added some cadmium yellow and some white. And then I'm going to add some phthalo blue and some burnt umber. And then some ultramarine blue. And then I just need to lighten that back up. We're gonna add some more white. And of course I made that a little too light. Let's add some olive green. You can get this color by doing a bunch of different mixtures, but I just got it that way. Alright, and then you just add these little highlights on top of your existing shadows. And again, I'm holding the brush at that angle and just putting it over top of some of my little shadows. Not over top of all of them, but just like working on building up those clusters so that we can see where the light would be hitting these. And you just kind of, this is the easy part, adding these little highlights. You just kind of go all over the place and brighten them up. Just in these little clusters. And then some people like to do even a third highlight, so for that I would just do white and yellow. Then I would just add that right on top of our current highlights, just in a couple little spots. Not all over the whole thing. So by adding our shadows and our highlights, that's how we bring this tree to life, give it some depth, show that it's got some shadows in a couple spots. Alright, so there is our first tree, the Lodgepole Pine. I'm going to clean off my brush. Now we're going to do a fir tree, so I'm going to do that same thing. I start with the trunk by mixing my phthalo, my burnt umber, and a little bit of black. This tree is going to be taller in real life. It looks like this is a bigger tree. But for the sake of this painting, I'm going to keep them all about the same size. Gets a little wider at the base. Like that. Okay. And then for this guy, we don't see the branches quite as much. You do a little bit peeking through. So for this one, I'm just going to kind of make them go straight out. It's kind of what it looks like they do. So I'm just kind of very, very lightly pressing. I'm not necessarily dragging the brush. I might just be pressing it like this, just to give the illusion of some branches starting to stick out here. Alright, good enough. Now for the fun part, we can start with the branches and the needles. So we're going to take the sap green with our phthalo. It's going to give us a nice dark starting color. And I'm really lightly pressing here, just trying to get some paint on the canvas, holding it at an angle. Then we can start to get some branches. Bigger ones, bigger branches. So I'm just kind of playing with the brush, making it make a U shape basically, like this, side to side. It's kind of how it looks at the top, and then it starts to get a little bit more flat as the weight of the branches pulls it down. So I do that branch, and then I start to add little mini side pieces that are coming off of it. And just a lot of dabbing. Not a lot of actual like brushstroke work, but just dabbing the paint on. And they start to get a little wider as they're coming out too. Same with that other tree we did. You want to make sure you have some kind of going down, so there's not a lot of empty space towards the bottom until you get to the way bottom. We got the shadow. Now we're going to get our highlight in, so I'm going to take the extra paint off my brush, and then we're going to take some of our sap green and yellow. Take a little white. So now I'll show you how I did that top with the highlight. It's the same thing, I'm just putting it in just a couple little spots to cover up. So you just hold the brush at an angle and just dab the paint on there, making tiny little lines. Alright, that's how we get the top. And then we want to start to add some more highlights on the tops of our other branches. And you're not going to have a highlight on every single branch. Some of them are in the shadows. And you definitely have more highlights towards the top of the tree though. And then I just kind of start at the outer portion of where the branch would be, and then I just pull that brush in and pick it up as I pull it in, so that it kind of creates that shadow effect of the brush, of the branch going in and getting darker and more in shadow. Just take some yellow and some white again. And we'll add that again. Now everybody has their own style of painting that they've picked up and paints trees differently, but this is my style, so if you are a fan of how this looks and you want to create art like this, then definitely welcome to use this style of painting and this approach. Some people have their own methods that they use, so just do whatever style you enjoy the most and makes the most sense and is the easiest for you to pick up. Alright, there we are. There is our fir tree. Alright, let's do a cypress tree. That's a good one. So we're going to take brown, black, and our phthalo blue again to get the base for it. Just kind of same thing we did before. A little thicker at the base. Kind of in that U shape. This one says it's Lawson Cypress. The branches come down really low down, almost to the base. Alrighty. I'm just gonna... Alright, so now for this one, we're gonna use sap green. We'll use a little viridian green and some phthalo blue. We'll use a hint of brown too, the burnt umber. And then to get started with the shadow, I'm going to use a little black in there too actually. To get started with the shadows, we just take our little brush and do a little fan. So to make the fan, I'm holding the bottom in one spot and I'm moving the top like this. At a larger scale, this is what I'm doing basically. But I'm doing it at a smaller scale to make the little cypress needles show up on the tiny tree. And you can also do it by making little brush strokes like this, where you very, very lightly hold the brush and just kind of pick them all from that one central spot. I think that's a little more realistic than the other method of just dabbing it. And you basically just make these little clusters all over the place. And you're going to have a little more white space at the top where you can see through, and a little bit less as we move towards the bottom of the tree. And you really just want to get the outside shape the most accurate, and then you can kind of just dab quickly on the inside just to cover some space. And then just work on those outer edges. You can leave a little bit of white space in there. Alrighty, and then we'll do our highlights. We're just going to mix white with yellow and olive green. A little bit of burnt sienna. And just do that same thing where you just make your little same pattern of this little highlight on each of them. And you only want the highlight to go on certain little patches, not the whole thing, so that we can build up the depth in the tree. I'm just working my way down. So this part, doing the highlight, is a little bit more tedious than just blocking in that base shadow color, because you do need to get that shape in the central area. You can't just fill in with blobs of highlight. It needs to have that same kind of shape. And then we do another highlight. We'll just mix some yellow with our olive green and our burnt sienna. We'll do a little more yellow too. I think it's just a little bit warmer and a little lighter than our original color. And we just throw that right on top of some of our existing highlights. And I guess we'll do one more just for fun. So we're going to do black with our raw umber and our phthalo blue again to get the trunk. This one will go right here. And this one is a hemlock. So for this one, we have a couple little branches that come out kind of at diagonals. Alright, then we'll do our shadow color, so we'll just mix some green in with our black, brown, blue color. Do little dabs of flat lines till we get to the top there. And we just got some lines kind of coming out from the center. This one's more of doing dabs rather than brush strokes. So you just create these little lines coming out from the center, drag a couple lines down that kind of come off of that branch. Okay, so it looks closer to the fir tree. So we're gonna mix our sap green, olive green, a little bit of white. Making those little lines coming off from the top. And if you ever feel like you overdid it with the highlights, just go back and build up your shadows a little more. And that'll separate everything back for you. But that's that, guys. I hope that helped you with painting your trees. And if you have any other recommendations for videos you'd like to see or tutorials you'd like some help with, then just leave a comment below, and I'm happy to help you guys out and create more tutorials for you. Have a great day and happy painting. Bye bye!